I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from. At my son's company anniversary dinner, my daughter-in-law stood up with her champagne glass and announced to everyone, "To Alejandra, always so interested in our lives. Maybe because hers is so quiet." The whole table erupted in laughter. 80 guests. Every single one of them looking at me like I was some lonely old woman desperate for attention. What they didn't know was that I owned 70% of the company where my daughter-in-law thought she was conquering the world. And in less than 24 hours, I was about to show her exactly who signed her paychecks. Let me back up and tell you how we got here. My name is Alejandra Torres. I'm 71 years old. For the past 5 years, most people thought I was just another widow living off Social Security, spending my days volunteering at the community center. They had no idea I'd built an empire. The Riverside Country Club was decorated like something out of a magazine that night. Crystal chandeliers, white roses on every table, a string quartet playing softly in the corner. My daughter-in-law Camilla had spared no expense for her and David's 5th wedding anniversary party. I arrived early, wearing a simple navy dress I'd bought at Macy's 3 years ago. Nothing fancy. I'd learned a long time ago that the most powerful people in the room are often the ones nobody notices. "Mrs. Torres," the hostess greeted me with that particular smile people reserve for elderly relatives they're obligated to be nice to. "Let me show you to your table." She led me past the bar, past the elaborate floral arrangements to a table near the back. Not quite hidden, but definitely not prominent. I noticed my place card. Alejandra Torres, mother of the groom. At least they got my name right this time. I sat down and watched the room fill up. Camilla had invited everyone who mattered in her professional world. The partners from Preston Industries, the mayor, the president of the Chamber of Commerce. Even Jim Henderson was there, the man whose company had recently signed a $2.5 million contract with Preston. A contract I knew was already falling apart, but nobody else did. Yet. "Alejandra," my son David appeared, looking handsome in his tailored suit. He kissed my cheek. "You look great, Mom. I'm so glad you could make it." "I wouldn't miss it," I said, squeezing his hand. "Where's Camilla?" "Working the room." He laughed, but there was something tired in his eyes. You know how she is with networking. I did know. I'd been watching Camila Richardson work rooms for 5 years now. She appeared moments later, gliding across the floor in a black cocktail dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her blonde hair was swept up in an elegant chignon. Diamond earrings caught the light. She looked like success personified. "Alejandra," she air-kissed near my cheeks, careful not to disturb her makeup. "I'm so glad you could make it. You remember the Hendersons, don't you?" Jim Henderson stepped forward, looking uncomfortable. His wife, Patricia, clutched her purse like a shield. "Mrs. Torres," Jim said, "good to see you again." "Please, call me Alejandra." I smiled warmly. "How's the new system implementation going? I heard Preston was helping you modernize your operations." Jim's smile became forced. "Well, there have been some challenges, more complicated than we were initially led to believe. Budget stretched about 40% over what we discussed." "Oh, Jim." Camilla's laugh was bright and brittle. "You're such a perfectionist. These things always have adjustment periods. We'll work through the little issues." "Little issues?" Patricia spoke up for the first time. "We've had 3 project managers quit in 2 months. Details." Camilla waved her hand dismissively. "Alejandra, I need to introduce you to someone. Excuse us, won't you?" She steered me away from the Hendersons before I could respond. "That woman," Camilla muttered under her breath. "Always complaining. Some people just don't understand how business works." I said nothing, but I filed away every word. The dinner was exactly what I expected. Expensive food presented like art. Speeches from Camilla's colleagues praising her business acumen. David beaming with pride as person after person stood up to celebrate his incredible wife. Then came David's speech. "5 years ago," he began, his voice warm and full of love, "I met someone who changed my life. Camilla doesn't just work in business. She is business. She's taught me so much about strategy, about negotiation, about what it takes to succeed in this world. He raised his glass. To my wife, who's going to be running her own company someday. I have no doubt. The room erupted in applause, and Camilla stood, basking in the attention, her smile brilliant and calculating. That's when I noticed something. 2 men at the bar, both wearing Preston Industries name tags. They were talking quietly, heads bent together. I'm good at reading lips, a skill I'd developed over 40 years in business. Henderson's situation is a disaster, one said. The other nodded. Third account this quarter. Management's asking questions. I took a sip of my wine and filed that away too. After dinner, as guests mingled over coffee and cake, Camila found me near the coat check. Alejandra, I've been thinking. Her voice was syrupy sweet. You've been managing that little consulting business of yours for so long. Maybe it's time to consider retirement. I could help you find someone to take it over. You deserve to relax, enjoy your golden years. Her eyes held something calculating, something predatory. That's very thoughtful, I said, retrieving my coat. I'll certainly give it some consideration. I drove home through the quiet suburban streets, my hands steady on the wheel. Inside, though, I was calculating, planning, preparing. Camilla Richardson thought she was so smart, thought she'd figured out how to get ahead by stealing information from the silly old widow who wouldn't notice. She had no idea who she was dealing with. I need to take you back to where this all started. 5 years ago, when David first brought Camilla home to meet me. It was a Sunday afternoon. I'd made my grandmother's tamales, the recipe I'd brought with me from Mexico when I was just 7 years old. The ones David had grown up eating every Christmas, every birthday, every celebration. Mom, you'll love Sarah, David had said on the phone that morning. He always called her Sarah back then, before she legally changed it to Camila. Said it sounded more professional. She's got this incredible business sense. She just became the top salesperson at her company. I was genuinely happy for him. After losing his father to cancer 2 years earlier, David deserved some joy, some light in his life. The doorbell rang at exactly 2 o'clock. Punctual. I appreciated that. David walked in first, his face glowing with that particular happiness of new love. Behind him came a woman in a designer suit, Armani, if I wasn't mistaken, checking her phone as she stepped through my door. Mom, this is Camila. Camila, this is my mother, Alejandra. Mrs. Torres. Camila extended her hand, her grip firm but brief. David has told me so much about you. What a cute little neighborhood this is. Cute little neighborhood. My modest suburban home in a working-class area of town. The house I'd bought 30 years ago when my consulting business was just getting started. The house I'd deliberately kept after becoming wealthy because I never wanted to forget where I came from. Thank you, I said. Please come in. Dinner's almost ready. We sat in my small dining room, the same table where I'd served Thomas his last birthday dinner before the cancer took him. The same chairs David had sat in as a boy, doing homework while I worked late into the night, building my business. This is delicious, David said, digging into the tamales. Remember, Mom, I told you about that big client Camila just landed? I do remember. I turned to Camila. Congratulations. That must have taken a lot of hard work. Camila dabbed her lips with a napkin. Thank you. It's about understanding what people need before they know they need it. Research, strategy, being smarter than the competition. What kind of company do you work for? I asked. McKinley Marketing. We do consulting for mid-sized businesses looking to expand. She leaned back in her chair. Though I'm already looking at other opportunities, McKinley is a stepping stone. I want to be somewhere with real growth potential. Throughout dinner, I noticed things. The way she steered every conversation back to herself. How she checked her phone under the table when she thought no one was looking. The questions she asked about my volunteer work at the community center. Questions that felt less like interest and more like assessment. So, Alejandra, she said over coffee, David mentioned you used to do some kind of consulting work? What was that like? Oh, just helping small businesses with their operations, I said, keeping my voice vague. Mostly retired now. I spend my time at the community center, helping with their programs. That's sweet, Camila smiled, but her eyes were calculating. Everyone needs hobbies, especially at your age. It must be nice to have that kind of free time. At your age, as if 70 was ancient. As if I wasn't still running board meetings and closing 7-figure deals. David didn't notice. He was too busy looking at Camila like she'd hung the moon. After they left, I stood at my kitchen sink washing dishes, staring out at the small garden Thomas and I had planted together. Red flags were waving in my mind, but I told myself I was being paranoid, being overprotective. Maybe Camila was just ambitious. Nothing wrong with that. I'd been ambitious too, once upon a time. I called my attorney, Marcus Knight, the next day. Marcus, I need you to do something for me. What's going on, Alejandra? His voice was concerned. We'd worked together for 20 years. He knew when something was wrong. David's dating someone new, Camila Richardson. I want you to run a background check. Nothing invasive, just the basics. There was a pause. You don't trust her. I don't know her, I corrected. And I want to make sure my son is safe. The report came back clean. Camila Richardson, age 29, bachelor's degree from State University, MBA from a decent business school, no criminal record, no outstanding debts. Parents deceased. Father died when she was 16, mother when she was 23. Everything looked normal on paper. But paper doesn't tell you everything. 2 years later, David called me with news that didn't surprise me. Mom, I proposed. She said yes. I could hear the joy in his voice, the excitement. How could I tell him that something felt wrong when I had no concrete reason? When his fiancée had been nothing but polite, if a bit distant, during our monthly family dinners? That's wonderful, sweetheart, I said. I'm so happy for you. Camila wants to get married at the Riverside Country Club. She's already started planning. Mom, I know it's going to be expensive, but don't worry about the money, I interrupted. I'll take care of it. Mom, you don't have to. David, you're my only child. Let me do this for you, please. The wedding cost $150,000. Camila had very specific ideas about everything. The flowers had to be white roses from a particular florist. The champagne had to be French. The photographer had to be someone who'd shot celebrity weddings. I wrote every check without complaint. At the rehearsal dinner, Camila's maid of honor, a woman named Tiffany who worked at McKinley Marketing with her, pulled me aside. Mrs. Torres, I just wanted to say, David is so lucky to have you as a mother. The way you're paying for everything, being so supportive. She hesitated. Camila's lucky too. My mother-in-law didn't even come to my wedding. Family is important, I said simply. Tiffany looked like she wanted to say something else, but Camila appeared, linking her arm through mine. Alejandra, I need your opinion on something. She steered me away from Tiffany. For the ceremony tomorrow, I'm thinking you should sit in the 3rd row. That way the immediate family, David's cousins and their families, can be closer to the front. You understand, right? Optics matter. The 3rd row. At my own son's wedding. Of course, I said, smiling. Whatever you think is best. The wedding was beautiful. Camila looked stunning in her $10,000 dress. David looked happier than I'd seen him since his father died. I sat in the 3rd row, watching my only child get married, and told myself I was being petty for feeling hurt. At the reception, Camila's toast was all about their future, their dreams, their plans to build an empire together. She never once mentioned family, never thanked me for paying for the wedding, never acknowledged that I was even there. David was too happy to notice. I was not the problem started almost immediately after the honeymoon. Camila had opinions about everything in my life. My clothes were too dated. My car was too old. My furniture was too shabby. She'd make little comments during our monthly family dinners, always couched as concern. Alejandra, have you thought about updating your wardrobe? David and I could take you shopping. You'd feel so much better about yourself. Mom, maybe we should look at getting you a newer car. That Honda is, 15 years old now? This couch has seen better days, hasn't it? We should help you redecorate, make this place feel more current. David would laugh nervously and change the subject. He was caught between his mother and his wife, trying to keep everyone happy. But then Camilla landed her dream job at Preston Industries. Our monthly dinners became her personal press conferences. "I closed the Henderson account last week," she announced one Sunday, cutting into her steak with theatrical precision. "Biggest sale in company history, $2.5 million. They said it couldn't be done, but I made it happen." David beamed. "Tell Mom about the bonus. $50,000. Cash. Plus they're giving me a company car and talking about profit sharing." She watched my face carefully, clearly expecting amazement. What she was actually seeing was recognition. The Henderson account. I'd been courting Henderson Manufacturing for 3 years through my own network. I knew Jim Henderson personally. We'd served together on a nonprofit board. I'd helped him navigate a difficult merger 5 years ago. I'd stopped pursuing his business 6 months ago because I'd identified too many red flags. Their financials were shaky. Their management was in flux. The project they wanted help with was going to be a nightmare of scope creep and delayed payments. So I deliberately let that lead go cold. And somehow Preston Industries, a company I'd been watching for other reasons, had swooped in and closed it. "That's wonderful, dear," I said, refilling my water glass. "Competition keeps everyone sharp." Camilla's smile faltered. She'd expected more enthusiasm. Questions about how she'd pulled off such a coup. Admiration for her business savvy. Instead, I'd treated it like news about the weather. Over the next few months, the pattern continued. Every monthly dinner brought new stories of Camilla's incredible success. She was single-handedly transforming Preston Industries, recruiting new clients, redesigning their sales process, being fast-tracked for partnership. "The other sales reps hate me, of course," she said with obvious satisfaction one evening. "They're jealous because I'm showing them how it's really done. Old-school methods don't work anymore. You have to be willing to think outside the box." "What kind of outside-the-box thinking?" I asked innocently. "Oh, understanding the client's needs before they even express them. Having insights into what their real pain points are. Being one step ahead of the competition." She was so proud of herself, so confident that no one would ever question where those insights came from. But I was keeping score. In 6 months, Preston Industries had stolen 3 major clients from my consulting network. Not from Torres Consulting directly. That was too small, too obscure for Camilla to even know about. But from clients who'd had preliminary discussions with my people. Each time, the pattern was the same. Preston would approach them with proposals that addressed their specific concerns. Concerns that weren't public knowledge. Concerns that someone would only know if they'd had access to confidential discussions. The problem was, I'd never told David about these clients, never mentioned them at family dinners. So how was Camilla getting the information? I called Marcus again. "I need you to look into something," I said. "Preston Industries, their recent business development. Specifically, any connection to someone in my family." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Alejandra, are you sure you want to go down this road?" "I'm already on this road, Marcus. I just need to know where it leads." The report came back 2 weeks later. Marcus called me instead of emailing, always a bad sign. "Can you come to my office?" His voice was carefully neutral. "This afternoon, if possible." I drove downtown to Marcus's law firm, my mind racing through possibilities. Traffic was heavy. My hands were steady on the wheel, but my heart was pounding. Marcus's office was on the 15th floor, all dark wood and leather chairs. Professional. Expensive. He'd come a long way from the young attorney who'd helped me incorporate my first business 40 years ago. "Sit down," he said, gesturing to the chair across from his mahogany desk. "This isn't easy." He laid out a series of documents. Financial records, payment statements, email headers, not the full emails, not yet, but enough to establish a pattern. "Camilla Richardson has been receiving monthly payments from Preston Industries," Marcus said. $8,500 a month for the past 8 months. Officially, it's for strategic business intelligence consulting. My stomach dropped, even though I'd suspected something like this. "The timing is interesting," Marcus continued. "The payment started right after you mentioned, casually at a family dinner, that you were considering some new client relationships in the healthcare sector." I remembered that dinner. David had asked about my volunteer work at the community center. I'd mentioned just in passing that I was helping coordinate a program with 3 local hospitals. Nothing specific, nothing confidential. 3 weeks later, Preston Industries announced a new healthcare consulting division. "There's more," Marcus said. "The payments are classified as consulting fees, which is technically legal, but the timing of every payment corresponds with Preston landing a contract that your network had been pursuing." He pulled out another document. "This is a list of every client Torres Consulting Network lost to Preston in the past 8 months, cross-referenced with the dates of your family dinners." The correlation was undeniable. Every major client loss happened within 2 weeks of a family dinner where I'd mentioned, however casually, something about upcoming opportunities or client discussions. "Marcus I said slowly. "Camila has been using information from our family conversations to help Preston steal my clients." "That would be my assessment." He leaned back in his chair. "The question is, what do you want to do about it?" I stared at the documents spread across his desk. 8 months of betrayal. 8 months of my daughter-in-law sitting at my table, eating my food, smiling to my face while systematically undermining my business. "I need to know the full scope," I said. "How deep does this go? Is it just the consulting fees or is there more?" "I'll dig deeper." Marcus's expression was grim. "But Alejandra, you need to prepare yourself. When we expose this, David is going to be devastated." "I know." My voice was barely a whisper. "But he needs to know the truth, even if it breaks his heart." I drove home in a daze. The suburban streets that usually felt safe and familiar seemed different somehow, darker. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about the woman my son had married, trying to understand her motives. Camila wasn't stupid. She had to know that corporate espionage, because that's what this was, carried serious legal consequences. She had to know that stealing confidential information was wrong. So why do it? The answer came to me around 3 in the morning, because she thought she could get away with it. Because she'd looked at me and seen a harmless old widow. Someone too trusting, too naive, too out of touch to recognize what was happening. She'd underestimated me completely, and that was going to be her biggest mistake. Marcus called me back 5 days later. "You need to come to the office again. And Alejandra, you're going to want to sit down for this." This time the stack of documents was twice as thick. Marcus had been thorough. "Let's start with the background check," he said. "The one I ran 5 years ago when David first started dating her." I nodded. It came back clean. "Because Camilla Richardson is clean, but that's not her real name." He slid a document across the desk, a birth certificate from 16 years earlier. Her birth name was Camila Hartley. Father, James Hartley, small business owner. Mother, Rebecca Hartley, homemaker. The next document was a newspaper clipping from 2008. The headline made my chest tighten. "Local business owner dies by suicide following bankruptcy." James Hartley had owned a small manufacturing company. When the 2008 financial crisis hit, he'd lost everything. The house, the savings, the business his father had built. He'd hanged himself in his garage. His 16-year-old daughter had found him. "Oh my God," I whispered. "It gets worse," Marcus said gently. "After James died, the family lost their home. Camilla and her mother moved in with Rebecca's sister. They lived there for 5 years. The mother died of cancer when Camilla was 21. No insurance, no savings, medical bankruptcy." He pulled out more documents. "Camilla put herself through college with loans and 3 part-time jobs. She graduated with honors. Got her MBA while working full-time. Changed her name legally 7 years ago, around the time she started her career in business." I stared at the documents, seeing Camilla in a completely different light. "She wasn't born a con artist," I said slowly. "She was created by trauma." "That's my assessment." Marcus's voice was sad. "I think she looked at you, successful, comfortable, secure, and saw everything she'd lost when her father died. Everything she's been terrified of losing again. So she decided to take it," I said. before someone could take it from her. Exactly. Marcus pulled out another set of documents. But here's where it gets complicated. Those consulting payments I mentioned, they're legal. Unethical, probably, but legal. She's not directly stealing from Torres Consulting. She's receiving compensation for business intelligence, which she gathered from my family conversations, which she gathered from conversations you had with your son. Marcus emphasized the distinction. David told her things. She used them. That's not theft in the legal sense. My mind was racing. So we can't prosecute her for corporate espionage. Not easily. We'd have to prove she knowingly stole confidential proprietary information. Family dinner conversations don't meet that threshold. He paused. But there's something else. Marcus pulled out one final document. A letter on Preston Industries' letterhead. 3 weeks ago, Preston Industries submitted a formal offer to acquire Torres Consulting, $1.2 million. I stared at the number. Torres Consulting, just the consulting division, not the entire network, was worth at least $15 million. The full network was worth closer to $50 million. This is insulting, I said. It's also very revealing. Marcus pointed to details in the letter. Look at the information they have. Your client roster, contract values, renewal dates, operating expenses. Some of this information is confidential. Some of it isn't even documented anywhere except in your personal files. The implications hit me like a freight train. Camila has been in my house, I said slowly. She's been in my home office. That would be my guess. Marcus's expression was grim. David probably gave her access. She's his wife. Why wouldn't he? I thought back to all the times David and Camila had visited. How Camila would excuse herself to use the restroom or make a phone call. How she'd sometimes stay behind when David went to move the car or help with groceries. She'd been going through my files, taking pictures of documents, stealing information right under my nose. So what can we do? I asked. If we can't prosecute for espionage, what are our options? Marcus leaned forward, his expression intense. That depends. How much do you know about Preston Industries? It's a mid-sized consulting firm. Been around for about 20 years. Good reputation, mostly. Do you know who owns it? I frowned. The board of directors, I assume. Maybe private equity? Marcus smiled. No, Alejandra, you own it. The room spun. What? Torres Holdings LLC, the shell company you set up 15 years ago, owns 70% of Preston Industries. You bought controlling interest 3 years ago when they were facing bankruptcy. I handled the acquisition myself. My mind flashed back. 3 years ago, a distressed asset purchase. I'd invested $12 million to save a failing consulting firm with plans to restructure and grow it. I'd kept the acquisition quiet. Let Preston operate independently while I worked behind the scenes to improve their systems, their processes, their culture. Oh my God, I breathed. Camila has been working for me this entire time. Yes. Marcus's smile was grim. Every client she stole from Torres Consulting ultimately benefited your bottom line because Preston is your subsidiary. Every bonus she earned came from your investment capital. Every success she celebrated was paid for by your money. The irony was staggering. She has no idea, I said. None whatsoever. Preston's management knows about Torres Holdings LLC as an investor, but they don't know you're behind it. I made sure of that when we structured the deal. I sat back in my chair, my mind reeling. Camila had spent 8 months betraying her husband's mother, stealing information, undermining family trust, all while unknowingly working for the woman she was trying to destroy. Marcus, I said slowly, I think it's time Camila learned who really holds the power. We spent the next 3 hours planning. Marcus was brilliant at this. He'd built his career on complex corporate litigation and hostile takeovers. He knew exactly how to structure what we were about to do. First, he said, we need to secure your legal position. If Camila realizes what's happening, she might try to claim you manipulated her or set her up. How do we prevent that? Documentation. We're going to document everything. Every conversation. Every payment. every stolen client. We'll build a timeline that shows clearly that you were the victim here, not the aggressor." He pulled out a legal pad and started making notes. "Second, we need to decide how public you want this to be. Do you want to expose Camilla publicly, press charges, or handle this privately within the family?" I thought about David, about how devastated he'd be when he learned the truth about his wife. "I want to give David a chance to see the truth for himself," I said slowly. "I don't want to be the villain in his story. I want him to see who Camilla really is." "That's tricky." Marcus tapped his pen against the pad. "If we wait too long, she might do more damage. But if we move too fast, David might think you're attacking his marriage." "Then we need to set a trap," I said. "Something that will make Camilla reveal herself." Marcus looked at me with new respect. "What did you have in mind?" "Next month is David and Camilla's 5th anniversary. She's planning a big party at the Riverside Country Club. 80 guests, all her professional contacts. I saw the invitation. What if that party became the venue for the truth?" I leaned forward. "What if we let Camilla have her moment of triumph, and then show everyone exactly who she really is?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "That's risky. Public humiliation can backfire." "I'm not talking about humiliation." I shook my head. "I'm talking about revelation. Let her succeed. Let her celebrate. Let her feel like she's won. And then, quietly, privately, show her the truth about who she's been playing against. And David? David will be there. He'll see it all. He'll see his wife's reaction. He'll see who she really is when she thinks no one important is watching." Marcus nodded slowly. "Okay, but we need insurance. If this goes sideways, we need to be protected." "What kind of insurance?" He pulled out his phone. "I'm going to have Preston's board call an emergency meeting. We're going to establish formal ethics policies, clear guidelines about conflicts of interest, documentation requirements for any consulting arrangements." "Won't that tip off Camilla?" "No. We'll position it as standard corporate governance. Companies do this all the time. She won't think twice about it." "And if she violates the new policies?" "Then we have grounds for termination with cause. No severance. No unemployment. And depending on what she does, potential legal consequences." I nodded. "Do it." The next 3 weeks were some of the hardest of my life. I had to sit at family dinners, smile at Camilla, pretend everything was normal while knowing what she'd done, what she was still doing. At one dinner, she mentioned, casually, like it was nothing, that Preston was considering a major acquisition. "We're looking at smaller consulting firms," she said, cutting her chicken with delicate precision. "Companies that are outdated, not keeping up with modern business practices. The owners are usually older people who don't understand digital transformation, easy targets for acquisition." "Sounds interesting," I said mildly. "Have you identified any specific targets?" Camilla's eyes gleamed. "A few. There's one in particular, Torres Consulting, I think it's called. The owner is getting older, probably ready to retire. They have some decent client relationships we could leverage." David looked confused. "Wait, isn't that—" "Yes," I said calmly. "That's my company." The silence at the table was deafening. Camilla's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. Her face went pale. "You're what?" she managed. "Torres Consulting. I own it. Have for 40 years. I could see her mind racing, trying to recalculate, trying to figure out if this changed anything. "I didn't realize," she said slowly. "I thought you just volunteered, did some consulting on the side." "I did a bit more than that," I smiled. "But I can understand the confusion. I don't really talk about work at family dinners. It's more pleasant to focus on other things." David was staring at me. "Mom, you never told me you still owned a consulting business." "You never asked, sweetheart." I patted his hand. "It's not that important. Just something I do to keep busy." But I could see Camilla's mind working. See her realizing that the outdated company she'd been planning to acquire was mine. That the clients Preston had been stealing were mine. that she'd made a terrible miscalculation. "Well," she said, recovering with impressive speed, "what a funny coincidence. Small world." "Isn't it?" I agreed pleasantly. The rest of dinner was awkward. Camila kept checking her phone. David kept giving me confused looks. I ate my meal calmly, knowing that I'd just planted a seed that was about to grow into something Camila couldn't control. After dinner, as David and Camila were leaving, I walked them to the door. "Camila," I said quietly, "if Preston is seriously interested in acquiring Torres Consulting, you should have them send a formal proposal. I'm always open to discussions." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Of course. I'll mention it to the team." After they left, I called Marcus. "She knows," I said, "or at least she suspects." "Good." His voice was satisfied. "Now she'll either back off, which protects you, or double down, which gives us more evidence." "I think she's going to double down." "Then we'll be ready." Which brings us back to where we started. The Riverside Country Club. The 5th anniversary party. 80 guests watching Camila Richardson celebrate her success. And me, sitting at a table near the back, holding all the cards while everyone thought I was holding nothing. Camila's toast was everything I expected. "5 years ago, I married the love of my life," she said, raising her champagne glass. "David has supported me through everything, my career, my dreams, my ambitions." She smiled at the crowd. "Some people thought I couldn't make it in this business, that I was too young, too inexperienced, too ambitious. But I proved them wrong." Her eyes found me across the room. "And I did it despite having to deal with people who were jealous of my success. People who couldn't understand that the business world has changed, that old methods don't work anymore." There it was. The dig. The insult. So here's to everyone in this room who believed in me, who supported me, who understood that success means being willing to do whatever it takes. She raised her glass higher. And to Alejandra, always so interested in our lives, maybe because hers is so quiet. The laughter from 80 guests washed over me. I stood up slowly, my purse in my hand. I walked to the front of the room, my low heels clicking on the hardwood floor. Every eye was on me. I pulled out a business card, not from Torres Consulting, but from Torres Holdings, LLC, and I slid it across the table to Camila. "Actually," I said, my voice carrying clearly through the suddenly silent room, "I'm quite interested in your life, Camila, because I own 70% of Preston Industries, have for 3 years, which means I own your career. You could have heard a pin drop. I also own Torres Consulting, the company you've been trying to acquire, and I own the building where Preston's headquarters is located, and I own about 40% of the clients you think you stole from me." Camila's face had gone from pale to ashen. "So when you say I have a quiet life, you're right. I prefer to work quietly, behind the scenes. Let other people take credit while I actually run things." I turned to the crowd, my voice calm and clear. "But I think it's time everyone knew the truth about who really signs the paychecks around here." The silence in that ballroom lasted maybe 5 seconds, but it felt like an eternity. Camila's champagne glass slipped from her fingers. Crystal shattered on the marble floor. The sound echoed through the room like a gunshot. That's impossible," she whispered. "You're just a volunteer. You don't have—" "I have everything." I kept my voice gentle, almost kind. "Including documentation of every consulting payment Preston has made to you over the past 8 months. $8,500 a month. For business intelligence, wasn't it?" The color drained completely from her face. David stood up so fast his chair fell backward. "Mom, what are you talking about?" I turned to my son. This was the moment I'd been dreading, the moment his world would shatter. "David, sweetheart, I need you to come with me. There's something you need to see." "No!" Camila's voice was sharp now, panicked. "David, stay here. Your mother is lying. She's trying to manipulate you because she's jealous of our success, of our marriage." "Jealous?" I looked at her calmly. "Camila, I'm worth $47 million. What exactly would I be jealous of?" The gasps from the crowd were audible now. I heard someone whisper, "$47 million? Jim Henderson stood up from his table. Mrs. Torres, are you saying you own Preston Industries? 70%, Jim. Through Torres Holdings, LLC. I bought controlling interest 3 years ago when Preston was facing bankruptcy. You can verify it with the Secretary of State's office tomorrow if you'd like. Jim's face went red. Then you need to know, the implementation on our contract is a disaster. We're 40% over budget, 3 months behind schedule, and we've lost 3 project managers. Your head of sales promised us results she couldn't possibly deliver. I know, I said quietly. I've been monitoring the situation. That's actually one of the things I need to discuss with Preston's board on Monday morning. Robert Manning, Preston's CEO, was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. Your Torres Holdings? I thought the investor paperwork said. The paperwork was intentionally vague. I prefer to work behind the scenes. Let management run the company without interference. I looked directly at him. But when there are ethics violations happening under your watch, I have to step in. Ethics violations? Robert looked genuinely confused. We'll discuss it Monday. 9 a.m. conference room. Bring your head of HR and your general counsel. I turned back to David, who was standing there looking shell-shocked. His face was pale. His hands were shaking. David, please, come with me. We need to talk privately. Don't listen to her. Camila grabbed David's arm. She's doing this because she never accepted me, because she wants to control your life. This is elder manipulation, David. She's using money to what? I asked. To tell my son the truth about his wife? To protect my business from corporate espionage? To finally stop pretending I don't see what's been happening for the past 8 months? Marcus appeared at my elbow. I hadn't seen him enter, but I should have known he'd be here. He'd probably been waiting outside, ready to step in if things went wrong. Mrs. Torres, he said formally, perhaps we should move this conversation somewhere more private. Agreed. I looked at the crowd of 80 stunned faces. I apologize for disrupting your evening. Please enjoy the rest of the party. The bar is still open. Nobody moved. They were all too busy staring. I walked toward the exit, my head held high. David followed after a moment's hesitation. Marcus came with us. Camila started to follow, but Marcus held up a hand. Ms. Richardson, I'm going to need you to stay here for now. I have some questions about those consulting payments. My firm represents Torres Holdings, LLC, and I'll need to review the terms of your arrangement with Preston. I don't have to talk to you. Her voice was shrill now. I have rights. You do, Marcus agreed, including the right to remain silent, which, frankly, I'd recommend you exercise right about now. We ended up in a small private room off the main ballroom, the kind of room the country club used for intimate dinners or business meetings. Marcus closed the door behind us. David stood in the middle of the room, looking lost. Mom, I don't understand. You own Preston Industries? You've been, what, spying on Camila? Not spying, protecting. I sat down in one of the leather chairs, suddenly feeling every one of my 71 years. Sit down, sweetheart, please. He sat. His hands were still shaking. I'm going to tell you everything, I said. And I need you to listen. Really listen. Not as Camila's husband, not as my son. Just listen to what I'm telling you, and then decide what you believe. Marcus pulled out a folder I hadn't noticed him carrying. He set it on the table between us. Start from the beginning, David said. His voice was hollow, so I did. I told him about the background check 5 years ago, about the red flags I'd noticed at that first dinner, about how I'd chosen to give Camila the benefit of the doubt. I told him about the pattern I'd noticed, how Preston kept landing clients I'd been pursuing, how the timing always lined up with our family dinners. You talk to me about work sometimes, I said gently, about my consulting business, about potential clients, and I talk to you because you're my son, because I trusted you. David's face crumpled. And I told Camila everything. You told your wife things. That's normal. That's what married couples do. I reached across and took his hand. You didn't do anything wrong, David. You trusted the person you married. That's not a failure. That's what you're supposed to do. But she used it. His voice broke. She used the things I told her to steal from you. Marcus opened the folder. David, I need to show you something. He pulled out the first document. Bank statements showing payments from Preston to Camilla. Your wife has been receiving consulting fees for 8 months, officially for strategic business intelligence. But if you look at the dates of these payments and cross-reference them with the dates Preston landed major contracts. He laid out a second document, a timeline. Every payment corresponds with a stolen client. Every stolen client corresponds with information that came from your family dinners with your mother. David stared at the documents. She was getting paid to betray my mother? She was getting paid to provide competitive intelligence, Marcus corrected. Which would be legal if she were obtaining that intelligence through legitimate means. Market research, public records, industry contacts. But she wasn't. He pulled out another document. This is from Preston's proposal to acquire Taurus Consulting. Look at the information they have. David read through it, his face getting paler with each line. Some of this is from Mom's home office. I've seen these files. Camilla couldn't have gotten this from casual conversation. No, I said quietly. She got it by going through my files when she visited my house. When you thought she was using the bathroom or making phone calls. Oh, God. David put his head in his hands. I gave her access. I told her to make herself at home. His voice broke. How could she do this? Marcus and I exchanged glances. This was the moment we had to decide how much to tell him. David, I said gently, there's more you need to know about Camilla, about who she really is. I told him everything Marcus had discovered, about James Hartley, about the bankruptcy and the suicide, about a 16-year-old girl finding her father's body in the garage. She changed her name 7 years ago, I said. Legally, became Camilla Richardson instead of Camilla Hartley. Started over. David looked up, his eyes red. Why didn't she tell me? About her father, about what happened? Because she was ashamed, Marcus said. Or afraid, or both. Trauma does strange things to people, David. Your wife watched her family lose everything. Watched her father choose death over bankruptcy. That kind of experience, it changes you. So you're saying she's not really a criminal? David's voice held desperate hope. She's just damaged? She's both, I said carefully. She suffered terrible trauma, and she responded to that trauma by deciding that security, money, status, power was the only thing that mattered. That she'd do whatever it took to never be powerless again. Including using me. David's voice was flat now. Including marrying me to get access to your business. I wanted to lie to him, to tell him that Camilla had loved him, that the marriage was real even if her methods were wrong. But I'd promised myself I would give him the truth. I don't know if she married you specifically to get to me, I said honestly. Marcus found evidence that she'd researched our family before you met, that she knew I was successful in business. But I also think she genuinely cared about you, David. I don't think that was fake. How can you say that? His voice rose. After everything she did, because I watched her with you for 5 years, I saw how she looked at you when you weren't looking at her. I saw genuine affection, maybe even love. I squeezed his hand. People are complicated, David. Camilla can love you and still use you. She can want security and still care about your happiness. The human heart is capable of holding contradictory things. Marcus cleared his throat. There's one more thing, David. Something you need to know before you talk to Camilla again. He pulled out the final document. 3 days ago, your wife tried to transfer $500,000 from your business account to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. David went absolutely still. What? The bank's fraud prevention system flagged it and blocked the transfer. They called me because I'm listed as your business attorney. I've been investigating for the past 72 hours. $500,000. David's voice was barely audible. That's everything. My entire business savings, the down payment for the new office, the payroll reserve. Yes. She tried to steal everything I've worked for. Yes. David stood up abruptly. The chair scraped against the floor. He paced to the window, stared out at the parking lot. I need to talk to her, he said finally. I need to hear her say it. Why she did this. If any of it was real. David, I started. I know, Mom. Oh, I know what you're going to say. That talking to her is dangerous. That she'll manipulate me. That I should just walk away. He turned to face me, and I saw something new in his eyes. Something harder. But I need to do this. I need to hear the truth from her. Not from bank statements and legal documents. From her. I looked at Marcus. He nodded slightly. Okay, I said, but not alone. Marcus will be with you, and you need to record the conversation for legal protection. I don't care about legal protection right now. David's laugh was bitter. I just want to understand how the person I loved could do this to me, to my mother, to us. We found Camilla exactly where we'd left her, still in the ballroom, but now sitting at a table with her head in her hands. The party had dissolved. Most of the guests had left. A few stragglers remained at the bar, drinking and whispering. Robert Manning was gone. So were the Hendersons. So were most of the Preston Industries employees who'd been celebrating just an hour ago. Camilla looked up when she heard us approaching. Her makeup was smeared. Her perfect hair had come loose from its pins. She looked smaller, somehow. Diminished. David, she breathed. David, please, let me explain. Conference room, Marcus said firmly. Now, we're not doing this in public. The country club manager, probably alerted by the earlier drama, had already prepared one of the small conference rooms for us. 4 chairs, a table, a box of tissues on the credenza. Very thoughtful. Camilla sat across from David. I sat beside my son. Marcus stood near the door, his phone discreetly positioned to record. Talk, David said. Tell me why you did it. Camilla's hands were shaking. She twisted her wedding ring around and around her finger. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she said. I swear, David, I never meant... The truth, Camilla. David's voice was hard. No more manipulation. No more excuses. Just tell me the truth. She took a shaky breath. When I met you, I thought your mother was just... ordinary. A widow living on Social Security. Someone who volunteered to fill her days. And I thought... She stopped, clearly struggling with what to say next. You thought what? David prompted. I thought we'd be taking care of her someday. Financially. And I was okay with that. Because I loved you. Because taking care of your mother was part of loving you. But then, I said quietly. Camilla looked at me. Her eyes were red but dry. No tears. Interesting. But then I realized you weren't what you seemed. You'd ask questions at dinner. Careful questions about my work, about Preston's clients, about strategies and approaches. And I started to wonder if you were assessing me somehow, testing me. I was making conversation, I said. Getting to know my daughter-in-law. Were you? Camilla's voice held an edge. Or were you gathering intelligence on your competitor? Preston wasn't my competitor. Preston is my subsidiary. I didn't know that. Her voice rose. How was I supposed to know? You never told anyone. You played this game of pretending to be nobody while secretly being... She gestured helplessly. Whatever you are. A businesswoman, I said calmly. I'm a businesswoman who chose to keep her professional life private from her family. That's not manipulation. That's boundaries. But you used the information I gave you. Camilla leaned forward. You admitted it. You used what I told you at family dinners to protect your business, to stay one step ahead of Preston. I paused. She had a point. A small one. But still. You're right, I said. When I realized information was leaking, I started being more careful about what I shared. I used our dinners to test my suspicions, to see if Preston would act on information I deliberately planted. So you were manipulating me. Camilla's voice was triumphant now. You set me up. No. David's voice cut through the tension. Don't do that, Camilla. Don't try to make this about Mom being the bad guy. She protected herself after realizing you were stealing from her. That's not the same as you stealing in the first place. Camilla turned to him, her expression desperate. David, I did it for us, for our future. Your mother has millions. We were struggling. Your business was barely profitable. We had debt. I was trying to build something so we'd never have to worry. By stealing. David's voice was flat. By betraying my mother. By taking consulting fees to provide information about my family. By being smart, Camilla shot back. By recognizing an opportunity and taking it. That's how business works, David. That's how people get ahead. And the $500,000? Marcus spoke up for the first time. How does stealing from your husband's business account fit into your plan for our future? Camilla went still. What? The transfer you attempted 3 days ago. $500,000 to a Cayman Islands account. Want to explain that? She looked at David. I watched her mind work, saw her trying to find an explanation that would make it okay. That was insurance, she said finally. In case things went wrong. In case you got caught, Marcus finished. In case your corporate espionage was exposed and you needed to disappear with as much money as possible. I wasn't going to disappear. Camilla's voice was shrill now. I was just being prepared, being smart. You were stealing from me. David stood up. From me, Camilla. Not from some corporation, not from a competitor, from your husband. David, please, did you ever love me? His voice broke on the question. Was any of it real, or was I just a tool to get to my mother's money? For the first time, Camilla's carefully constructed facade cracked. Her face crumpled. Real tears, not manipulative ones, started to fall. I did love you, she whispered. I do love you. David, you have to believe me. When I met you, when we first started dating, I didn't know anything about your mother's business. I fell in love with you, really loved you. But, David prompted, but then I found out about her money, about her company, and I thought, she wiped at her tears, I thought, why should we struggle when she has so much? Why should I work 80 hours a week for scraps when there's this fortune just sitting there? So you decided to steal it. David's voice was hollow. I decided to be smart about our future. Camilla slammed her hand on the table. Your mother was never going to just give you money. She was keeping you dependent, keeping you small. I wanted us to be successful. I wanted us to be secure. Is that so wrong? Yes, I said quietly. Yes, Camilla, it is wrong, because it wasn't your money to take. It wasn't your information to sell, and you didn't just betray me. You betrayed David. You used his trust, his love, his innocence. Camilla stared at me. You're one to talk about manipulation. You've been pulling strings this whole time, playing us like puppets. I protected my business, I said. And I protected my son. That's not the same as what you did. David was standing with his back to us now, staring at the wall. His shoulders were shaking. I realized he was crying. David? Camilla's voice was soft, uncertain. He turned around. His face was wet. His eyes were red. But his voice was steady. I want a divorce. Camilla went white. David, no, please. We can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can— $500,000, Camilla. David's voice was quiet but firm. You tried to steal everything I've worked for, everything I've built, while smiling at me, while sleeping next to me, while telling me you loved me. I do love you. No. David shook his head. You love security. You love money. You love the idea of never being poor again. I understand why. God knows after what happened with your father, I understand why. But you don't love me. You love what I could give you access to. That's not true, isn't it? David's laugh was bitter. If I was broke, Camilla, if I had nothing, if my mother had nothing, would you have married me then? The silence was damning. That's what I thought. David turned to Marcus. What do I need to do? For the divorce? For all of it? Marcus pulled out another folder. I took the liberty of preparing preliminary paperwork. Given the attempted theft, you have grounds for fault-based divorce. You can also file for an emergency order protecting your assets. Do it. David, wait. Camila stood up. You can't just, I have rights. This is my home too. My marriage too. You can't just throw me away because your mother convinced you. My mother didn't convince me of anything. David's voice was cold. Your actions did that all by themselves. The bank statements convinced me. The consulting payments convinced me. The $500,000 you tried to steal convinced me. He walked to the door, then paused and looked back. I really did love you, Camila. I thought we were building a life together, a partnership, but you were just using me. And I can't, his voice broke. I can't be married to someone I can't trust. He left, just walked out of the room, left Camila standing there, her perfect evening in ruins. I stood up to follow him, but Marcus touched my arm. Give him a minute, he said quietly. He needs to process. I nodded. Then I looked at Camila. She was still standing there, frozen. Her face was a mask of shock and disbelief. This is your fault, she said to me. All of it. If you'd been normal, if you'd been what you pretended to be, if I'd been what? I asked. Poor, helpless, easy to manipulate? Is that what you wanted, Camila? Someone you could control? I wanted a family, her voice rose. I wanted security. I wanted to never feel like I did when my father died. Is that so terrible? No, I said softly. It's not terrible to want those things, but the way you went about getting them, that was terrible. You hurt people. You betrayed trust. You stole. You would have done the same thing if you were me. Her voice was bitter. If you'd lived through what I lived through, you would have grabbed security any way you could. I thought about that, about the girl who'd found her father dead, about the trauma that had shaped her. Maybe, I said honestly, maybe if I'd experienced what you experienced, I would have made different choices, worse choices. I don't know. But Camila, I met her eyes. Trauma explains behavior. It doesn't excuse it. You still made choices, you still hurt people, and you still have to face the consequences. She stared at me for a long moment. Then she laughed. It was a terrible sound, hollow and broken. Consequences, she repeated. You're going to destroy me, aren't you? You and your lawyers and your money. No, I said. I'm going to let you destroy yourself. There's a difference. I walked to the door, paused, looked back. Camila, I'm genuinely sorry for what happened to your father, for what you went through. No child should have to experience that. But you're not a child anymore. You're a woman who made choices, who hurt people, and now you have to live with that. I left her there, standing alone in the conference room, her perfect life shattered around her. I found David in the parking lot, sitting in his car with his head on the steering wheel. I tapped on the window. He unlocked the door. I got in the passenger seat. We sat there in silence for a long time, just breathing, just being. I'm such an idiot, David said finally. No, you're trusting. That's not the same thing. I should have seen it, should have noticed. How? I turned to look at him. She was careful. She was smart. She used your love against you. How were you supposed to see that? You saw it. I'm 71 years old, David. I've been in business for 40 years. I've seen every kind of manipulation, every kind of deception. You're 38, and you believed in the goodness of the person you married. That's not stupidity. That's love. He was quiet for a moment. Did she ever love me? Really? I think so, I said honestly. I think she loved you as much as she was capable of loving anyone. But her trauma, her fear, was stronger than her love. And that's not your fault. 5 years, he whispered. 5 years of my life with someone who was using me. 5 years of building a life, 5 years of experiences. 5 years of growth. I took his hand. It wasn't all fake, David. Maybe her motives were mixed. Maybe she had agendas. But the life you lived together, that happened. It was real, even if it wasn't what you thought it was. That doesn't make me feel better, Mom. I know. We sat in silence again, watched the last few guests leave the country club, watched the lights go out one by one. What happens now? David asked. With Preston, with the divorce, with everything. Now we rebuild, I said. We protect what matters. We move forward. And Camila? I sighed. Camila faces consequences. Legal ones, professional ones, personal ones. What those look like exactly, we'll figure that out. David nodded slowly. I don't want to destroy her, Mom, even after everything. I don't want revenge. Neither do I. I squeezed his hand. But we do need justice, and we do need to make sure she can't do this to anyone else. What does that mean? It means Monday morning, I'm calling an emergency board meeting at Preston. It means Marcus is filing paperwork for your divorce and the asset protection. It means we're going to document everything she did and make sure the appropriate authorities know about it. Will she go to jail? I don't know, I said honestly. That depends on a lot of factors. What she does next, whether she cooperates, whether the district attorney thinks it's worth prosecuting. But at minimum, she'll lose her job, her reputation, her marriage. That feels like enough punishment. David's voice was quiet. Maybe it is, I agreed. Or maybe it's just the natural consequence of her choices. We sat there a while longer. Finally, David started the car. Come stay with me tonight, I said. You shouldn't be alone. He nodded. Okay, yeah, okay. We drove through the quiet streets to my house, the same house where this had all started 5 years ago. The same table where Camila had sat, planning her strategies. The same rooms where she'd smiled and betrayed us. But it was still my home. Still a place of safety. I made David tea, the same chamomile blend I'd made him as a child when he couldn't sleep. He sat at the kitchen table, holding the mug but not drinking. Mom, he said finally. Yes? Thank you for protecting me, even when I didn't know I needed protecting. My eyes burned with tears. Always, David. Always. I woke up at 5:30, like I always do. 40 years of running a business had trained my body to wake before dawn, ready to work. But this morning was different. David was asleep in his old bedroom, the room I'd kept exactly as he'd left it when he moved out 15 years ago. The same navy blue bedspread, the same bookshelf full of college textbooks and childhood trophies, the same desk where he'd done his homework while I worked late into the night, building an empire he didn't know existed. I made coffee, strong and black, sat at my kitchen table watching the sun come up over the neighborhood where I'd raised my son alone after cancer took his father. My phone buzzed, a text from Marcus. Board meeting confirmed for 9 a.m. Robert Manning wants to talk beforehand. 8 a.m. at his office? I texted back. I'll be there. Another buzz. This one from a number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Torres, this is Jim Henderson. I need to speak with you urgently about the Preston contract. Can we meet? And another. Alejandra, it's Patricia Henderson. Thank you for what you did last night. We've been trying to get out of that contract for months. Preston threatened us with penalties. The floodgates were opening. By 6 a.m., I had 12 messages. Clients, Preston employees, even the mayor, asking if we could discuss the situation privately before it becomes a media issue. Everyone wanted to know what happened. Everyone wanted to position themselves on the right side of the story. I ignored them all except Jim Henderson. I texted back, come to my house, 7 a.m., bring the contract file. David emerged from his bedroom at 6:30, looking like he hadn't slept at all. His eyes were red and swollen. He was still wearing his suit pants from last night, wrinkled now, with a t-shirt he'd found in his old dresser. Coffee? I offered. Please. We sat together in silence. Sometimes the best thing you can do for someone who's hurting is just be present. Just exist in the same space, breathing the same air, sharing the same quiet. I keep thinking I should feel angrier, David said finally, but I just feel empty. The anger will come, I said. Right now you're in shock. Your brain is protecting you from feeling everything at once. Is that what happened when Dad died? This numbness? I thought back to those terrible weeks after Thomas's funeral. The strange disconnection from reality. The feeling of moving through water. Yes, I said. Grief looks different for everyone, but numbness is part of it. This feels like grief. David stared into his coffee. Grieving someone who's still alive. Grieving the person I thought she was. That's exactly what it is, I said softly. You're mourning the death of your marriage, the death of who you thought Camila was. That's real loss, David. Don't let anyone tell you it's not. The doorbell rang at exactly 7 a.m. Jim Henderson stood on my porch, looking exhausted. He carried a thick accordion file folder. Mrs. Torres, thank you for seeing me on such short notice. Come in, Jim. Coffee? God, yes. We sat at my dining room table, the same table where Camila had gathered her intelligence, where she'd smiled and stolen and plotted. Jim spread out the contract documents, page after page of technical specifications, deliverables, payment schedules. This is a nightmare, he said bluntly. Preston promised us a complete system overhaul, cloud migration, process automation, change management. They said it would take 6 months and cost $2.5 million. And the reality? I asked. 9 months in, we're not even halfway done. We've spent $3.8 million. We've had 4 different project managers. The system they're implementing doesn't actually do what they promised. And when we try to exit the contract, they threaten us with liquidated damages of $2 million. David was reading over my shoulder. That's not just poor execution. That's fraud. That's what our lawyers say. Jim looked at me. But Preston has deep pockets for legal battles. We don't. So we've been trapped, bleeding money, watching our company suffer. I read through the contract carefully, and there, in section 12.4, I found exactly what I was looking for. Jim, this contract has a performance clause. If the vendor fails to meet agreed-upon milestones, the client can terminate without penalty. Preston claims they are meeting milestones. They redefine them every month. Did you agree to the redefinitions in writing? No, it's all been verbal. Emails at most. I smiled. Then they're in breach. You can terminate. Today if you want. Jim's face flooded with relief. Are you sure? I'm sure. And as of 9 a.m. this morning, I'm taking active control of Preston Industries. I'll personally ensure you exit this contract cleanly. No penalties, no legal battles. Why would you do that? Jim asked. After everything. After what your daughter-in-law did. Camila is not my daughter-in-law anymore, I said firmly. And she's not representative of my business practices. I built my reputation over 40 years on integrity and quality work. Preston will return to those standards. Starting today. Jim shook my hand. Thank you, Alejandra. Truly. After he left, David looked at me with something like awe. You just saved his company. I saved my reputation, I corrected. Jim Henderson is respected in this community. If word got out that a Torres company was running fraudulent contracts, it would damage everything I've built. Still, you didn't have to help him. Yes, I did. I met my son's eyes. Because this is who we are, David. This is what separates us from people like Camila. We do the right thing even when it costs us something, especially when it costs us something. Robert Manning's office was on the 10th floor of Preston Industries headquarters, a building I technically owned but had never actually visited. I'd always managed my investment remotely, through Marcus and quarterly reports. Robert was waiting when I arrived at 8 a.m. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 45, with gray at his temples and worry lines around his eyes. Mrs. Torres. He stood as I entered. I apologize for not recognizing you last night. The acquisition paperwork went through Torres Holdings, LLC, and I was told the principal investor preferred to remain anonymous. I did prefer that, I said, sitting across from his desk. I believe in letting management run their companies without interference from investors, but circumstances have changed. Camilla Richardson. Robert's jaw tightened. I need to know, how much of what she told us was stolen information? I pulled out the timeline Marcus had prepared. These are the contracts Preston landed in the past 8 months. These dates mark my family dinners where relevant information was discussed. You'll notice the correlation. Robert studied the documents, his face darkening. My God, she was feeding us intelligence from your own network. Yes, and we were paying her consulting fees on top of her salary. He looked sick. Mrs. Torres, I swear to you, I had no idea. Camila told us she had industry contacts, sources who provided market intelligence. We thought she was just exceptionally well connected. Did you ever question how she knew so much? Robert was quiet for a moment. I should have. Looking back, there were red flags. She'd know things about competitors that weren't public knowledge. She'd have insights into client pain points that seemed too specific. But she was getting results, and He stopped. I didn't ask the right questions because I didn't want to know the answers. That's honest, I said. It's also inexcusable. Robert stood up and walked to his window. Preston Industries was my father's company. He built it from nothing. When he died 5 years ago, I took over, and I almost destroyed it. We were bleeding money, making bad decisions, losing clients. That's when Torres Holdings invested. That's when you saved us, Robert corrected. Your capital and your guidance pulled us back from bankruptcy, and I repaid you by hiring someone who was stealing from you. You didn't know who I was. That doesn't matter. He turned to face me. I'm the CEO. The buck stops here, so I'm offering you my resignation, effective immediately. I considered that. Robert Manning was a decent man who'd made mistakes but wasn't corrupt. He was the kind of CEO who could learn from this, who could help rebuild. Resignation denied, I said. Robert blinked. Ma'am? You made mistakes, Robert, but you weren't malicious. You were desperate to save your father's company, and Camilla exploited that desperation. I stood up. What I need from you now isn't resignation. It's leadership, real leadership. Help me fix this mess. How? First, we terminate Camilla Richardson for cause, immediately. No severance, no references, full documentation of why. Done. Second, we review every contract she touched, every client she brought in. We determine what was legitimate business development and what was based on stolen intelligence. That's going to be a nightmare. Yes, but it's necessary. And third, I met his eyes. We implement ethics policies that ensure this never happens again. Training, oversight, consequences. We rebuild Preston's reputation one honest deal at a time. Robert nodded slowly. The board meeting is in 40 minutes. They're going to have questions. Let them ask. I have answers. The Preston Industries boardroom was impressive. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a marble conference table that could seat 20, Monty, leather chairs that probably cost more than most people's cars. 8 board members were waiting when Robert and I entered. They'd been talking amongst themselves, voices low and urgent. They fell silent when they saw me. Ladies and gentlemen, Robert said, allow me to introduce Alejandra Torres, the principal investor behind Torres Holdings LLC and the majority shareholder of this company. We know who she is, said a woman at the far end of the table. Margaret Chen, according to her nameplate, Chief Financial Officer. We saw the show last night at the country club. Social media has been on fire all morning. I hadn't even thought about social media. Of course people had recorded what happened. Of course it was spreading. Then you know why we're here, I said, taking a seat at the head of the table. We have a crisis. Multiple crises, actually. And we need to address them immediately. Starting with Camilla Richardson, said another board member. Thomas Wright, VP of Operations. Is it true she was stealing from you, from your other company? She was receiving compensation for providing competitive intelligence. Intelligence she obtained through personal family relationships and unauthorized access to confidential documents. Holy hell, someone muttered. We need to fire her, Margaret said. Today, now, before she causes more damage. Already being handled, Robert said. HR is preparing the termination paperwork as we speak. What about legal exposure? Asked another member. If clients find out their contracts were based on stolen intelligence, we disclose everything, I said firmly. We contact every client Camilla brought in. We review every contract for legitimacy. Where we find problems, we make them right, even if it costs us money. That could bankrupt us, Thomas protested. No, I said. Covering this up could bankrupt us. Coming clean and fixing it will cost us in the short term, but it will save our reputation in the long term. And reputation is everything in this business. Who made you CEO? Margaret's voice was sharp. No offense, Mrs. Torres, but you've been a silent investor for 3 years. Now you want to swoop in and dictate policy? I own 70% of this company, I said calmly, which means I can do exactly that. But I'd prefer to work with this board, not against it. So let me make my case. I stood up and walked to the window. I've been in consulting for 40 years. I've built multiple successful companies. I've navigated crises worse than this. And I'm telling you, with absolute certainty, that our only path forward is complete transparency and aggressive ethics reform. That sounds expensive, Thomas said. It is expensive. But you know what's more expensive? Class action lawsuits, federal investigations, criminal charges for corporate espionage. I turned to face them. Because that's where this goes if we try to hide it. If we protect Camilla or cover up what she did, it becomes conspiracy. It becomes fraud. It destroys everyone in this room. That got their attention. So here's what we're going to do, I continued. We terminate Camilla for cause. We conduct a full internal investigation. We disclose our findings to affected clients. We offer remedies, contract revisions, refunds, whatever makes it right. We implement new ethics policies and training. And we rebuild trust, one honest interaction at a time. And if clients sue us anyway? Margaret asked. Then we defend ourselves with the truth. We made mistakes. We hired the wrong person. But when we discovered the problem, we fixed it aggressively and transparently. That's a defensible position. Covering it up is not. The board members looked at each other. Quiet conversations, worried faces. Finally, Margaret spoke. I move that we accept Mrs. Torres' recommendations and authorize her to take whatever actions are necessary to resolve this crisis. Second, said Thomas. All in favor? Robert asked. 8 hands went up, unanimous. Then it's settled, I said. Robert, have HR prepare Camilla's termination letter. Marcus, start the internal investigation. Margaret, I'll need a full financial review of every contract Camilla touched. And someone get me a list of every employee who worked with her. We need to know who else might have been involved. The board members scattered to their tasks. I was left alone with Robert. Thank you, he said quietly, for not giving up on this company, for not just walking away and letting us crash. Preston was your father's legacy, I said. I'm not going to let one bad actor destroy that. We're going to fix this, together. The call came at 10:47 a.m. Camilla had arrived at Preston Industries, ready to work like nothing had happened. Security had stopped her at the entrance. She's demanding to see you, Robert told me. Says you can't fire her without cause. Says she has rights. She does have rights, I agreed. The right to receive her termination letter and pack her personal belongings under supervision. That's it. Should we call the police? Not yet. Let me talk to her first. I found Camilla in the lobby. She was dressed for work in a sharp gray suit. Her hair was perfect. Her makeup was flawless. Like she could will away last night's disaster through sheer force of presentation. Alejandra, her voice was cold. Tell your security guards to let me through. I have work to do. No, Camilla, you don't. I handed her the termination letter. She read it, her face going pale. Terminated for cause due to breach of fiduciary duty and corporate ethics violations, she read aloud. You can't do this. I have an employment contract, which contains a clause about ethical conduct. You violated that clause by receiving undisclosed consulting payments for competitive intelligence. The contract is void. I'll sue you. Please do. I kept my voice level. Discovery will be very interesting. We'll subpoena your bank records, your communications, your consulting agreement with Preston, everything. Are you sure you want us looking that closely at your activities? Camila's hands were shaking. The letter crumpled in her grip. This is about David, isn't it? You're punishing me because your son finally grew a spine. This is about you stealing from my company, I said. David's decision to divorce you is separate, though I notice you're not denying the theft. I didn't steal anything. I provided consulting services and was compensated fairly. Services that required you to betray family confidences and access private documents without authorization. I crossed my arms. Camila, we both know what you did. The evidence is overwhelming. You can accept this termination gracefully, or we can escalate to legal action. Your choice. She stared at me with pure hatred. You think you've won, but I know things about Preston, about your business practices, about the shady deals you've made. I'll go to the press. I'll destroy you. Really? I pulled out my phone. Please do. I'm recording this conversation, by the way, so go ahead. Tell me what shady deals you think I've made. Camila's mouth opened and closed. She had nothing. Because there was nothing. 40 years of building businesses the right way. 40 years of documentation and transparency and following the rules. That's what I thought, I said. Now security will escort you to your office. You have 15 minutes to collect personal items only. Company property stays here. Your access cards and keys need to be returned. And Camila, I leaned closer. If you take any files, any documents, any proprietary information, I will have you arrested. Do you understand? This isn't over, she hissed. Yes, I said quietly. It is. Security escorted her to the elevators. I watched her go, feeling nothing but sadness. This woman had so much potential, so much intelligence and drive, and she'd thrown it all away because she couldn't distinguish between ambition and theft. What a waste. By noon, the story had exploded. Business executive exposes daughter-in-law's corporate espionage at anniversary party, read the headline on the Business Journal's website. The article was surprisingly fair. It outlined the facts: Camila's consulting payments, the stolen clients, the attempted theft from David's account. It included quotes from Preston's official statement about terminating an employee for ethics violations. But the comments section was brutal. Gold digger got what she deserved. This is why you don't mix family and business. That old lady is savage. I love her. Anyone else think the mother-in-law set this up? Feels manipulative. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Reporters wanted interviews. Business associates wanted to check in. Even some of my competitors called, probably hoping to find weakness they could exploit. I ignored them all except one call, the district attorney's office. Mrs. Torres, this is Assistant DA Jennifer Park. I'm calling about the situation with Camila Richardson. Yes? We've received your attorney's documentation of her activities. I need to ask, are you planning to press charges? I'd been thinking about this question all morning. What would the charges be? I asked. Potentially corporate espionage, theft, fraud, depending on how we structure the case. But Mrs. Torres, I need to be honest with you. These cases are hard to prosecute, corporate espionage especially. We'd have to prove she knowingly stole proprietary information, that the information was actually proprietary, that damages occurred. What are you saying? I'm saying if you want to pursue criminal charges, we'll investigate. But it might be a long, expensive process with no guaranteed outcome. The alternative is to handle this civilly. Sue her, get a judgment, move on. I thought about David, about how a criminal trial would drag him through months of testimony, how he'd have to relive the betrayal over and over. Let me think about it, I said. I'll get back to you. After I hung up, Marcus appeared in Robert's office where I'd been working. "We have a problem," he said. "Another one?" "Camila just posted on LinkedIn." He showed me his phone. Camila's post was long and emotional. "Today I was terminated from Preston Industries after my mother-in-law used her financial power to retaliate against me for my success. I've been accused of ethics violations, but the truth is, I was fired for threatening the ego of a powerful woman who couldn't handle a younger, more innovative professional in her family. This is what happens when old money meets new talent. This is elder abuse disguised as corporate governance. I will be fighting this termination and exposing the truth about Torres Holdings and Preston Industries. Stay tuned." "Oh, for God's sake," I muttered. The post already had 247 likes and 89 comments, most of them supportive. "She's positioning herself as the victim," Marcus said. "Playing the generational warfare card. Young innovative woman versus old traditional gatekeeper." "It might work," I admitted. "People love that narrative." "So how do we respond?" I thought about it. "We don't. Not yet. Let her talk. Let her tell her story. The more she says, the more she'll contradict herself. And then, when she's said enough to hang herself, we respond with facts. That's risky. So is engaging with her right now while emotions are high." I handed back Marcus's phone. "Monitor her posts. Document everything. But don't respond publicly. Not yet." Marcus nodded. "What about David? Is he seeing this?" "Probably." "He's going to be hurt." "Yes, and I'll be there for him when he needs me. But David is stronger than Camila thinks. He'll survive this." The next 48 hours were a blur of meetings, phone calls, and damage control. Preston's clients were surprisingly understanding. Most of them had suspected something was wrong with Camila's methods. They appreciated the transparency. Several even expanded their contracts as a show of support. The Henderson situation was resolved with a complete contract restructure and a $50,000 credit toward future services. Preston's employees were shaken, but rallied around the ethics reforms. Several came forward with information about Camila's behavior. Nothing illegal, but plenty of unethical. She'd taken credit for other people's work, bullied junior staff, created a toxic environment on the sales team. The picture that emerged was of someone who'd been enabled for too long because she got results. Never again. But Camila wasn't going quietly. On day 3, she filed a wrongful termination lawsuit, not just against Preston, against me personally, against David, against Marcus. The complaint was outrageous. 23 pages of accusations. Age discrimination. I'd fired her because I was threatened by younger women. Gender discrimination. I favored male employees. Intentional infliction of emotional distress. I'd orchestrated a public humiliation. Interference with business relationships. I'd poisoned her professional reputation. And, most bizarrely, elder abuse. I'd manipulated David into turning against his wife. The damages she was seeking, $15 million. "This is absurd," David said when he read it. We were in Marcus's office, reviewing the complaint. "She's accusing Mom of elder abuse? Mom is the elder." "It's a legal strategy," Marcus explained. "Throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. Make us spend money defending against ridiculous claims. Bog us down in discovery, maybe force a settlement just to make it go away." "Will it work?" I asked. "Not even close," Marcus smiled. "She's filed in federal court, which means everything becomes public record, including her consulting payments, including the attempted theft from David's account, including all the evidence of corporate espionage. She's basically asked a judge to examine her crimes in detail. So we let her proceed? We let her proceed. We respond to the complaint with a motion to dismiss. We attach all our evidence as exhibits, and we let the judge see exactly what kind of plaintiff we're dealing with. But that same day, Camila escalated further. She gave an interview to a local TV station. I watched it that evening with David, both of us stunned by her audacity. "I married into what I thought was a loving family," Camila said, tears running down her carefully made-up face. But my mother-in-law couldn't handle the fact that I was successful, that I was bringing prestige to the family name. She saw me as competition instead of as a daughter. The interviewer leaned forward sympathetically. What happened at the anniversary party? She publicly humiliated me in front of 80 people. She accused me of stealing, which is completely false, and turned my own husband against me, all because I was more successful in business than she expected me to be. Didn't she say she owned the company you worked for? She claims that, but I've worked at Preston for 3 years and never once heard her name mentioned. Now suddenly, after I become successful, she appears and claims ownership? It's suspicious. It feels like manipulation. Unbelievable, David breathed. The interview went on. Camila talked about how she'd grown up poor, how she'd worked 3 jobs to put herself through college, how she'd finally achieved success only to have it stolen by someone who resented her youth and ambition. She even cried when talking about David. I love my husband so much. I thought we were building a life together, but his mother has poisoned him against me. She's convinced him that I'm some kind of criminal when all I did was work hard and succeed. The interviewer asked about the consulting payments. That was legitimate work, Camila said firmly. I provided market research and industry analysis to Preston. Many professionals do consulting on the side. There's nothing illegal or unethical about it. But Alejandra Torres has twisted it into something sinister because she wants to control her son's life. After the interview ended, David just sat there, staring at the blank TV screen. She's lying, he said finally. About everything. About us. About you. About what she did. I know. People are going to believe her. She's good at this. She's good at making herself look like the victim. Some people will believe her, I agreed. Some people will always believe the person who cries on camera. But David? The people who matter? They'll see through it. They'll see the evidence. They'll see the truth. Will they? I turned to face my son. Do you believe her? Do you think I'm manipulating you? That I'm lying about what she did? Of course not. Then that's all that matters. You know the truth. I know the truth. Marcus knows it. The Preston board knows it. The evidence proves it. I took his hand. Camila can tell her story to anyone who'll listen, but she can't change the facts. 1 week after Camila's TV interview, Marcus called an emergency meeting. We have a situation, he said. A big one. David and I met him at his office. He had that look, the one he got when he'd discovered something significant. I've been investigating Camila's background more deeply, he said, following up on some inconsistencies in her employment history. And I found something. He laid out a series of documents. Camila Richardson, or Camila Hartley as she was born, has done this before. My stomach dropped. What? Not exactly the same, but similar patterns. 7 years ago, before she met David, she was briefly engaged to a man named Patrick Morrison, son of Elizabeth Morrison, who owned Morrison Consulting Group in Chicago. He pulled up a photo, a younger Camila with a handsome man in his 30s. The engagement lasted 8 months. During that time, Morrison Consulting lost 3 major clients to a competitor. There was an internal investigation. Nothing was ever proven, but Camila left the company abruptly. The engagement ended. Morrison Consulting shut down 6 months later. Oh my God, David whispered. Before that, Marcus pulled out more documents. She dated a man named Ryan Webster for 2 years. His mother owned Webster Financial Services. The relationship ended badly. Webster Financial Services was audited by the IRS shortly after. No charges were filed, but the company's reputation was damaged. She's done this before, I said slowly. This isn't just about trauma from her father's death. This is a pattern, a strategy. It appears so. Marcus's face was grim. She targets successful men with wealthy mothers, gains access to family businesses, extracts what value she can, then moves on when things fall apart. David looked sick, so I was just a mark, a target? We don't know that for certain, I said quickly. The previous situations might have been coincidental. Or they might have been learning experiences that led to her behavior with us. But David, I gripped his hand, this doesn't mean she didn't care about you. People are complicated. She might have genuinely loved you while also seeing an opportunity. That doesn't make me feel better, Mom. I know. Marcus cleared his throat. There's more. I contacted both previous families. Elizabeth Morrison wouldn't talk to me. She's still bitter about losing her company. But Ryan Webster's mother agreed to a phone call. She said, and I'm quoting here, "That woman is poison. She destroyed my son's life and nearly destroyed mine. If you're dealing with her now, lawyer up and document everything." Did she provide evidence? Some. Enough to establish a pattern of behavior. Enough to show that what happened with us isn't isolated. I thought about this. Can we use this information? In the wrongful termination lawsuit? Absolutely. It goes to her character, shows a pattern of unethical behavior, makes our case stronger. What about criminal charges? Marcus hesitated. That's harder. Each individual incident might not reach the threshold for prosecution, but the pattern might interest the DA, especially if we can show a consistent method of operation. David stood up abruptly. I need air. I can't. He walked out of the office. I started to follow, but Marcus stopped me. Let him process, he said. Finding out he wasn't special, that he was just another target, that's hard. He was special, I insisted. She married him. She stayed with him for 5 years. The others were just boyfriends. Maybe she thought he was her best chance at security. Or maybe, Marcus paused, maybe she actually did love him, as much as she was capable of loving anyone. And that scared her, so she fell back on what she knew. Manipulation, theft, control. I thought about that. About a woman so damaged by trauma that she couldn't accept love without trying to control it, without trying to monetize it. How sad, how utterly, devastatingly sad. I found David sitting in his car in the parking garage. He wasn't crying. He was just staring at nothing. I got in the passenger seat. I'm an idiot, he said flatly. No. I fell for the oldest con in the book. Rich guy, vulnerable after losing his dad, meets beautiful woman who pays attention to him. Tale as old as time. David, how many times did she research my family before we met? How long did she watch us? How carefully did she plan this? We don't know that she planned it, I said. Maybe she really did fall for you. Maybe the research came later, after she realized your family had money. Does it matter? He turned to look at me. Either way, I was a fool. You were trusting. That's not the same as foolish. Isn't it? His laugh was bitter. I ignored every warning sign, every weird question, every time she steered conversations toward your business. I just thought she was interested, supportive. Because that's what partners should be. She tried to steal $500,000 from me, Mom. His voice broke. While I was sleeping next to her every night, while I was telling her I loved her, she was planning to rob me and disappear. I had no answer to that, because he was right. The betrayal was total, complete. I don't know how to trust anyone again, David whispered. How do I know the next person isn't just using me too? How do I know what's real? You don't, I said honestly. You can't know for certain. That's the risk of loving someone. You have to choose to trust even though you might be hurt again. That's a terrible answer. It's the only honest one I have. I took his hand. David, Camilla hurt you. Badly. But she doesn't get to ruin your ability to love, to trust, to build relationships. That's giving her too much power. So what do? You heal. You take time. You go to therapy. You rebuild yourself. And eventually, when you're ready, you try again. With someone worthy of your trust this time. What if I choose wrong again? Then you'll survive it. Like you're surviving this. Because you're stronger than you think, David. Stronger than Camilla ever gave you credit for. We sat in silence for a while. Just breathing. Just being. Finally, David spoke. What are you going to do about the lawsuit? About Camila's campaign against you? I'm going to tell the truth, I said, clearly, publicly, with evidence, and then I'm going to let the chips fall where they may. She's going to fight dirty. Probably. But I've been in business for 40 years, David. I've survived hostile takeovers, market crashes, competitors who played dirty. Camila Richardson is smart, but she's not the first person who's tried to destroy me. Did the others succeed? I smiled. What do you think? The next day, I did something I'd been avoiding. I agreed to an interview, not with a small local station, with a major business news network, the kind with millions of viewers and fact-checkers and investigative reporters. Are you sure about this? Marcus asked. Going public means you lose control of the narrative. I've already lost control of the narrative, I pointed out. Camila's been telling her story all week. It's time I told mine. The interview was scheduled for the following Monday. That gave me 5 days to prepare, to gather evidence, to decide how much I wanted to reveal. I spent those 5 days working with Marcus and a media consultant. We practiced answers to hostile questions. We assembled documents. We created a timeline of events with irrefutable evidence. And we made a decision. We would tell everything. The consulting payments, the stolen clients, the attempted theft from David's account, the pattern with previous boyfriends, all of it. If we hold back, it looks like we're hiding something, the media consultant said. Full transparency is your best defense. On Monday morning, I drove to the studio. David came with me, moral support. Marcus was already there, files in hand. The interviewer was Patricia Morgan, a journalist known for tough but fair reporting. She didn't waste time on pleasantries. Mrs. Torres, your daughter-in-law has accused you of age discrimination, gender discrimination, and manipulation. How do you respond? I looked directly at the camera. With facts, I said. Camila Richardson was terminated from Preston Industries because she received undisclosed consulting payments for providing competitive intelligence. Intelligence she obtained by stealing from my family business. These are the bank records showing 8 months of payments totaling $68,000. I laid out the documents. These are the contracts Preston won using information Camila gathered from private family conversations. These are the emails where she discusses managing my son to extract information. And this is the bank record showing her attempt to transfer $500,000 from my son's business account to an offshore account 3 days before her termination. Patricia's eyebrows went up. That's quite an accusation. It's not an accusation. It's documentation. I pulled out more files. These are statements from Preston employees describing Camila's unethical behavior. These are statements from clients who felt misled by her promises. And these, I paused for effect. These are records from 2 previous relationships where similar patterns occurred. Wealthy men, successful mothers, business losses following Camila's involvement. You're saying your daughter-in-law is a con artist. I'm saying she has a pattern of behavior that involves targeting successful families and extracting financial benefit through deceptive means. Whether that's legal or illegal is for courts to decide. But it is documented, it is provable, and it is not age discrimination or gender discrimination. It's consequence for unethical behavior. The interview went on for 30 minutes. Patricia asked hard questions. I answered them with evidence and calm logic. At the end, she asked, "What do you want viewers to know about this situation?" I thought carefully about my answer. "I want them to know that this breaks my heart," I said. "I welcomed Camila into my family. I paid for her wedding. I tried to build a relationship with her. And she used that openness to steal from me, to use my son, to damage my business." My voice wavered slightly. Not manufactured emotion, real grief. But I also want people to know that Camila Richardson is a product of trauma. Her father died by suicide after losing everything. She watched her family fall apart. That kind of pain changes you. And while it doesn't excuse her behavior, it does explain it. She's not evil. She's broken. And she's making terrible choices because she's terrified of being powerless again. That's remarkably compassionate given what she's done to you. I'm 71 years old, I said. I've learned that holding on to anger only hurts yourself. I can acknowledge Camila's pain while still holding her accountable for her actions. Both things can be true.